Relatively breaking news, not long before we went live on the Young Turks today, NBC News came out with a sort of stuff that had been rumbling in the backgrounds, including some reporting that Ken Klippenstein did today actually for 2IT interviews about how money in the federal government is being redirected away from what it is intended to be used for to potentially fund the wall. And so here are some details of that. President Donald Trump has apparently been briefed on a plan that would use the Army Corps of Engineers and a portion of $13.9 billion of Army Corps funding to build 315 miles of barrier along the U.S. Mexico border, according to 3 U.S. officials familiar with the briefing. So when it's referred to as funding for the Army Corps of Engineers, it's like, I guess it's Army money. I know that's kind of vague, but it turns out we have a pretty good idea of exactly what that money was supposed to be spent on. The money was set aside to fund projects all over the country, including storm-damaged areas of Puerto Rico through fiscal year 2020, but the checks have not been written yet, and under an emergency declaration, the president could take the money from these civil works projects and use it to build the border wall. So look, obviously that's absolutely horrendous. We know that much money was never spent there. Some could theoretically be spent, but it's been held up for a number of different reasons that are fairly obvious. But it goes beyond just Puerto Rico. Under this proposal, the officials that briefed NBC News said that Trump could dip into the $2.4 billion allocated to projects in California, including flood prevention and protection projects along the Yuba River Basin and the Folsom Dam, as well as the $2.5 billion set aside for reconstruction projects in Puerto Rico, which is still recovering from Hurricane Maria. Now, I will supplement that with some of the details from Ken Klippenstein's reporting today. There's also there were various projects from FEMA that have been suspended, even in advance of the shutdown, before the shutdown happened, including a number of firefighters in California and other projects like that. It's not as directly linked to this just yet, but that money, were it to start to accrue because it's not being used for the disaster prevention and relief and repair efforts that it's intended for, would be in an account that could potentially be raided in the future. And so, if the money's not allocated by the Democratic leadership, and if he feels like, you know what, screw it, I'm going full authoritarian, I'm gonna declare a BS national emergency and I'm going to steal this money from these accounts, then that is going to not only be hurting Puerto Rico and other areas throughout California, disaster relief of a number of different ways, some we might not even know yet.
Yesterday during the show, we had a story about how Donald Trump was threatening to cut off FEMA funding to the state of California in response to wildfires, forest fires, and it's a very punitive move because whenever Donald Trump wants to punish anyone, it's usually a state that didn't support him during the election. And I'm bringing that up again today because it very much fits into the context of this story. So why is it that the funds necessary for disaster relief and prevention in California and in Puerto Rico are the funds that Donald Trump is, looking at in order to basically fund this nonsense border wall?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a punitive move by the president. It's another obvious attempt to punish political opponents, to punish those who he doesn't agree with, in order to fund something that's largely a giant symbol for his political base and nothing more than that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when he tweeted that, we talked that day. Why is he talking about this? I mean, why is he thinking about wildfires in California right now? It's not big news. There's not some gigantic new fire or anything like that. And I can't guarantee this, but if this plan that apparently is brewing is being talked about in the White House, we know what he tweets. He tweets the last thing that he heard. And so if there's talk of money being redirected, then maybe that's why California wildfires are on his mind. That or Fox and Friends talked about it, but I don't watch that show, so I don't know.
He's putting Americans in danger through this government shutdown. You have TSA workers in record numbers either quitting or calling in sick to work. You have aviation officials who do inspections on planes to make sure they're safe. Not working right now, they're furloughed, okay? So we don't have the necessary inspections of flights that are happening right now at this very moment. So he's putting people in positions, he's putting people in danger because of the government shutdown alone. And then to add insult to injury, he's possibly going to take funds away from people who have been victimized by natural disasters and funnel that money to a border wall. And what was the purpose of the border wall again? It was to do what again? To protect Americans?
Yeah,
to keep Americans safe. He is so disingenuous when it comes to that. It's unbelievable.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.